highly linked with the atmospheric radiative transfer. I mean, all of the remote sensing is basically a sub part of the radiative transfer. So that's why I'm asked to teach you this subject. Okay. So what is all about the atmospheric radiative transfer? So let me start with one story. That story probably all of you might have heard when you were like small kids, maybe not going to schools even at that age. The story is about the monkeys. There was a troop of monkeys sitting onto a tree, and it was like January month and cold night. It was very freezing night, and the monkeys were shivering, and they were thinking what to do and how to keep ourselves warm. And then they saw that there was a farmer and his friends nearby the tree, and they were seated around a fire. Then monkey saw that they were not freezing; they were in fact enjoying sitting around the fire in the cold night. And then monkey thought, why it is so? Some of them suggested that because they don't have tail, but that was not the reason. One of that monkey was a wise monkey, so he suggested that probably because of that red thing between them, that is keeping themselves warm. Uh, and if we can get that, probably we can also keep ourselves warm. So next day, when these farmers have left and they saw that red thing was gone, so monkeys searched all over that place, that anything red they could find, any fruits or anything. There is a fruit called chanotti. I don't know what is its English name, but it's very very red. I mean, it looks like burning red. Okay, and they collected a lot of them. They put into the central place and tried to keep themselves warm. Of course, they couldn't keep themselves warm. They all night they kind of froze into the night. So I hope you have heard this story before. And if you have heard the story, do you remember the moral of the story? Anyone?
Not everything red provides you heat.
Yeah. That was not the moral of the story, but of course, I mean, that's the answer that we are looking for. If you remember, the moral of the story was that doing mindless imitations doesn't lead you benefit. That was the moral of the story. Of course, that moral is for not the physics student. For the physics student, as this I think Misal pointed out, that not all the red thing can provide the heat. But there are more questions. I mean, let us look at the facts into this story. So there is something burning, and when there is something burning, it is red. Why it is red? Okay, and these farmers are not holding the fire in their hand or their body. This they are seated at some distance, but still they are getting the warmth. Why they are getting the warmth? And why all the red things doesn't give you the warmth? So that's the question, that's the moral for the physics student to say that. So yeah, I already mentioned why the so why the red things sorry, why the hot things appear red. I think you might have already learned about that. Maybe you can use the chat box if you are not comfortable speaking, uh, because see, in the face-to-face interactions, we can know that who is ready to give the answers. For me, now it is difficult to see your faces and ask that, okay, you give the answer or XYZ gives the answer. Because otherwise, all of the lecture will become like one way. Okay. So if we go into these uh, questions, of course, if you wondered what happened, the monkeys afterward, the monkeys went to like Tulsi Siam and the hot spring places and they kept themselves warm, so we don't have to worry about the monkeys. But what that the moral of the story that we were originally looking, it is basically governed by the four laws, and these laws are Planck's law. What does Planck's law tell us? The Planck's law tells us that every object at all the times keeps on emitting the radiation. So it's very difficult to visualize that. Like for example, I'm sitting here and I'm emitting the X-rays, but the amount of the X-rays I will be emitting will be very, very less. So Planck's law actually tells you how the energy is also distributed as a function of wavelength. But what it tells is that all the objects that has a temperature that emits the radiation. What does Wien's law tell us? So Wien's law tells us that how this energy is distributed, how this energy as a function of wavelength of the radiation is distributed. Then there is a Stefan Boltzmann law. What does it tells us? It relates that how that amount of the energy that is emitted from an object, how it is related to the temperature of the object. Okay, and then there is a Kirchhoff's law. So what does Kirchhoff's law tell us? That it tells us that if temperature is not changing, then amount of the radiation that is being absorbed at particular wavelength, if the object is an efficient absorber, so as we mentioned in one of the example, that red, why everything is red, not giving the hot. So let's say some object is absorbing a red color, it also emits the red color. And so if we take this four law, we can explain why the people can keep themselves warm around the fire. But we can actually look into the more relatable example. For example, what keeps the earth warm? Why there is life on earth and not on other planets? Because earth's temperatures are so comfortable for the life that survival of the life is only possible on earth. And that is why in astronomy there is only certain distance from the sun you can if there is a planet at a certain distance from the sun, then only you can expect to have a life there. Okay, so let us look at the example of Earth's temperature. So where do we get all of our energy?
From sun.
Very good. We get all of our energy from sun. We can have different forms of energy. For example, wind energy. But wind energy is basically solar energy because it produces a differential heating and then we get the wind. Even that fuel, which petrol and diesels and all those things which we use, coal, they are basically solar energy stored for long past. So trees, they receive the solar energy, convert into the wood, and then they get buried and then they get converted into the fossil fuel. That's how. So except for the say power plant, I think most of the energies which we get is solar energy. Anyway, but what we are interested is the instantaneous solar energy, and what we are interested is that if you take the Earth's global temperature, if you take the average of temperature over all the places of Earth for all the seasons, it is fairly constant. It's changing to a small level, but that changes are very small. That is what we study as a part of global warming. But if you forget for time being about global warming, what we have is constant temperature of the Earth. And why the temperature of the Earth is constant? So if Earth's temperature has to be a constant, it has, but sun is continuously shining and Earth keeps on continuously getting the radiation from the sun. So its temperature should have increased, but it's not increasing because, as in previous slide we mentioned, that Planck's law tells us that all the objects emit the radiation, and then other laws tells that how this energy is distributed. So there is a income of the radiation from the sun, and there is a loss of radiation in form of long wave radiations that we will see later. That we are not talking about wavelength, but we will see later. So there is a radiation from the sun, and there is a radiation loss from the Earth, and that difference between them, let us call it del E by del T as a so change in energy, Earth atmosphere system of energy as a function of time. And if this is a 0, then Earth's temperature will remain constant. And when will this be 0? This will be 0 when the total amount of energy that is absorbed into the atmosphere and total amount of energy that is emitted from the sun, from the Earth, it is equal. Then this will be 0. So what is the amount of the energy that is being absorbed? Okay, so let us say we have solar radiation coming onto the Earth's surface, and if you take an area, then in a unit area we get this much of the solar energy at top of the atmosphere. Of course, this number varies at an 11-year cycle. There are 100-year cycle and so on, but that variations are very, very small. So let us assume that this number is a constant. Okay, then not all of the energy that falls onto the Earth gets absorbed into the atmosphere, gets absorbed into that Earth. A part of the energy is reflected back to the space because of the clouds, because of the snow surfaces, because of the deserts and various surfaces. So only part of the energy that is absorbed, that is only matters in terms of increasing the temperature. So part of energy, let's say the energy, the fraction of the energy that is reflected back to the space is R, then amount of energy that is absorbed within the sun is 1 minus R into F. This is a symbol of sun. Okay. So solar and this number and this F is called solar constant. Okay. So total amount of energy absorbed into the Earth is 1 minus R into solar constant, and then divided by 4. Can you guess why this divided by 4? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, somebody is written. Okay.
So
What
there's a
do
question in the chat
ASR
box.
and OLA stand for exactly? Okay. So ASR is an absorbed solar radiation, amount of the solar radiation that is absorbed into the Earth. And OLR is outgoing long wave radiation. Of course, we have not talked about the wavelength so far, but you remember that the radiation that is going from Earth outward, they are into a longer wavelength than what radiation we receive from the sun. We'll come to that point about wavelength, but for time being, you remember that the radiation that is emitted from the Earth is a long wave radiation. Okay. So I was asking a question why this factor 4 comes from. So let us say this is an Earth, okay, and it is a sphere, and then radiation falls onto this sphere, okay, but the amount of the radiation that is going this way and getting intercepted by the Earth is only the cross section of the Earth. And what will be the cross section of the Earth? Let us say radius of the Earth is RE, then cross section of the Earth will be pi RE square, and that radiation falls onto Earth's surface, and in 24 hours Earth kind of rotates. All of that energy that we get as an average energy we get is actually distributed over all of the sphere. And what is the area of the sphere?
Four pi R square.
4 pi R square, very good. So the energy that we are intercepting is pi R square, but energy we are distributing is over the surface of 4 pi R square. And if you take that ratio, that is why that 4 will come into the denominator here. So amount of the energy that is absorbed into the Earth is 1 minus R. R is a reflection from the Earth, and is often called albedo. Word for the R is albedo. multiply by the solar constant divided by 4. That is the amount of the energy that is absorbed into the Earth. Okay. Now there is a Stefan-Boltzmann law, and what it tells us that amount of the energy that is emitted from the Earth is a fourth power of the
Temperature.
temperature. Okay. So if our main aim is to find out the Earth's temperature, okay, and what we know is that FOLR will be same as FASR. So temperature of the Earth will be FOLR divided by the Boltzmann constant and fourth root of this term, this ratio. Okay. In the place of FOLR, we can substitute FASR, and FASR is this term. So if we
Sir?
substitute, yeah.
So why would FOLR and FASR would be same?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the beginning, so let us say if there is a system that keeps on receiving the radiation, for example, if you stand into the sunlight, you will feel your temperature increasing. If you keep something into the solar sunlight, it will keep on increasing its temperature, isn't it? Similarly, so if Earth's temperature has to be kept the constant, that energy that it receives and energy that it emits should be the same. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, what we need is this term to be zero if temperature has to be kept constant. Okay. If this term is not zero, then you will, Earth will experience the increase in temperature. So if you take at any one season, for example, if you take, for example, Ahmedabad, okay, the amount of the radiation that we receive and let us say now winter, okay, so amount of the radiation that we receive, the amount of the radiation that is emitted from the Earth's surface is more. So that is why we feel more cold. That's why the winter feels cold, because there is a mismatch. There is more energy is lost than the amount of the energy received. Okay. If it is a summer, then we are getting more energy from the sun than what we are losing in the night. So, but if you take like 365 days of an average, then this number will turn out to be kind of close to zero.
Okay.
Okay. And it's exactly not zero. That's why that phenomenon of global warming is happening. And all of that global warming studies that we talk about basically is finding out this number, how much that difference between the get radiation incoming and radiation outgoing, and that difference, if we can find out, then we know that how much temperature will increase, at what rate it will increase, and so on. Anyway,
Sir,
so yeah.
how can energy emitted can be greater than the energy received?
Energy greater than, so there is already an let's say you think this as a kind of a water tank. Okay, there is a, let us say, uh, talab or something. Okay, there is a water pond, for example. Okay, and there is a rain will when there is a rain, the water will come in, then the level of the water will rise. Okay, and then when there is a like no rain, but people are using, some water is getting evaporated, some water is getting shipped into the earth, then the level will go on reducing. And what we can so if you take this analogy, then the level of the water is like a temperature. So yeah, let us suppose that there was no sun, for example, and there was only earth, and there was no radiation, there was no source of energy from outside. Earth's temperature will go on decreasing. Okay, it will go on decreasing until it becomes like a absolute zero temperature. That's what it will happen. We don't have absolute zero temperature for Earth because we get the energy from the sun, and then that energy remains stored for some time, and then again we lose that energy when winter comes. So we feel the fluctuations, but we don't really drain totally this energy out of the Earth. So if you had a doubt that whether this is how that conservation of the energy, so there is no harm is made to the conservation of energy laws. Okay, here it's all we are talking about the temperature. So Earth has this intrinsic energy because it has a temperature, and if it doesn't get, then it will keep on losing that temperature. And the question is, what keeps it away from losing the temperature? Okay, so we have now this equation that will tell us that what should be the Earth's temperature depending on to the various things. So F0, this F solar constant, I said, is kind of a constant. You can take the number 1367. This is called surface albedo. Its value is about 0.3. So whatever the energy that we receive from the sun, about 30% is gets reflected back. Only 70% is being used. Okay. So let us put R equal to 0.3. Then sigma is a Stefan Boltzmann constant, is a fixed number, and its value is how much? How much is the number? Anybody remembers the Stefan Boltzmann constant? I think 5.66 10 to the power minus 8 joule per meter square per second per steradian per Kelvin power 4. So you put this number and let us calculate this temperature. Let us everybody calculate the temperature and write down into the chat box.
Sir.
You can use the calculator.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah. Who is this?
Ninad.
Yeah, Ninad.
Yes, sir. Could you briefly again explain the numerator part of the equation for the absorbed radiation? I did
You
not
want
get
that
the
calculation?
1 minus R into F. I got the Y we divided by 4 because the illuminated part of the sun's energy is we take this as a cross section. I got that by 4, but I did not get the 1 minus R into F.
Okay, so 1 minus R. Okay. So let us basically, when will the temperature will rise? If the energy, radiation energy absorbed into the system, then the temperature will rise. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when any object will emit the radiation, when it has a temperature. Okay. Yeah, I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you need is that the amount of the energy that is absorbed and amount of energy that is radiated, that has to be the same if you want to keep the temperature constant.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what we want to find out is that how much amount of energy that is absorbed into the earth. Now, how do we find it out? So we know that sun radiates the energy equally in all the directions. We also know that what is the distance between earth and sun. Okay. And from that, and of course, you can send the satellite and directly measure the radiation. We know that this is the amount of the energy that is being emitted. This is the amount of energy that comes from the sun at top of the atmosphere, that at the Earth's distance per square meter. Okay. Now, all of this energy is not getting absorbed into the Earth. Only part of energy is absorbed into it. So let us say fraction R is not absorbed into the Earth. Fraction R get lost into the space because of the reflection or scattering and phenomena like that. Then the part of the energy that is absorbed will be 1 minus R.
Yes, sir. I got it.
Okay.
And sir, what does the F signify again?
So F is called solar constant. It is an amount of energy per square meter at top of the atmosphere. And
The
for time
value of
being, we are
reflect
assuming there is no atmosphere, for example. So at the Earth
Richard,
distance.
would if F signifies the constant amount of energy that that is radiating the atmosphere at a given time, then wouldn't that vary as we keep on changing the cross section, as in the area we want to measure?
No, I didn't get your question here. F is a solar constant, and it is, let us assume it is a constant, though it's not strictly constant, but for most practical purposes, we can say it is constant.
So my question is that if that we consider it to be practically a constant,
Yes.
then for this particular case, we are considering that for a particular cross section of area, we want to make the dE by dt constant for calculation purposes or for understanding purposes. But practically, if we
If you take a small area in some place, okay, then this may not be a constant, this may not be zero. But if you take whole of the Earth as a sphere, whole of the Earth, okay, then that is what we ought to have constant.
Okay, so sir, the F, does it signify the amount of sun's radiation on all of the Earth's atmosphere or particular area or particular part of the atmosphere?
Yeah, so it will be all of the atmosphere, okay. And why all of the atmosphere? Because the distance, so that because of the curvature and all those things, the distance between them will be smaller. I mean, distance that because of the curvature of the Earth, and distance between the Earth and Sun is so large that this we can ignore. So we can consider it constant at all the places. Okay, Kusali has calculated temperature and she has sent the value 255 degree Kelvin.
Sir, value of reflectance.
So you take it 0.3, value of R you take 0.3.
So, sir, for getting the room temperature, maybe Earth's reflectance value is more than 0.3. So we are getting 300 Kelvin as the room temperature.
No, it should not be more than 0.3. If you wanted to get room temperature, it would have been less than 0.3. But anyway, it is practically it is measured as a 0.3. So let us take it 0.3, then we will come to that constant itself. Of course, but you have a good point that the number that we have getting 255 degree Kelvin is not a room temperature that we observe. Okay, it's much colder than what we expected. Okay, Pratik has said 254 degree Kelvin. Okay, so you are getting number between 254 Kelvin and 255 degree Kelvin. That's good. That's the correct answer for this problem. And why we are getting the question is this. So what is the average temperature of the Earth, observed average temperature of the Earth? And that is 16 degree Kelvin. Okay, so temperature of the Earth is 16 degree Kelvin, but if you had a calculator purely based on these 4 laws of the radiations, okay, and then assume the no atmosphere, what you get is 255 degree Kelvin. So 16 degree Kelvin is how much? About
289?
Yeah, no, not 285. How much it should be?
289.
Yeah,
289,
285.
sir.
Yeah. Okay. So how much difference we are getting with respect to actual observations?
35 Kelvin.
35 degree Kelvin. So Earth is warmer by about 35 degree Kelvin, then it would have been expected from purely energy balance of this equation. And why it is so? It is because of the atmosphere, obviously. Uh, so how do we kind of an account for it? How do we account the atmosphere into this ready transfer calculations? Now, if you wanted to do that, you would require you have to assume the two systems, one like Earth, then the covered into the atmosphere, and then you have to do this energy balance twice, one for the atmosphere and one for the seas, and then you will get. We will look into this example later on. Okay, but the point I wanted to make is that this is what this is the importance of the atmosphere. That if we didn't have the atmosphere, we would be having a very freezing temperatures. Okay. So even though atmosphere, like for example, carbon dioxide is responsible for the global warming, it is also kind of supporting the life. If there is we are having a higher temperature because we have water vapor and carbon dioxides and methane and those kind of gases in the atmosphere that keeps our temperature warm. If you look at the other planets' temperature, for example, Venus, you will, for example, Venus has a very, very high temperature because it has mostly carbon dioxide. Its atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide. Of course, it's more closer to the sun also, but it has much more higher temperature than predicted by the uh, sun Venus distances. So this is the importance of the atmosphere. Okay.
So, sir, while including the atmosphere, which term will change? I mean, only the R will change, or?
No. So this equation will not. So this equation will require a modification that can actually take into account the atmosphere. Okay. I mean, we will go into that example later on. Okay. But let me tell you some of the difficulties with an experiment. Let's say, for example, R. Okay. R we have taken it 0.3, and it is a total. So what is the R? So it is a ratio of total amount of energy that is falling onto the Earth and total amount of energy that is reflected from the Earth without getting absorbed. Without it's not like re-emission. It's just a scattering or just a reflection. And how do we get this number? Let's say if you wanted to measure R, how you would approach it? You wanted to find out R experimentally.
So if we go
Maybe
by the
we
equation, then if we measure the FASR and we know the constant sun irradiance falling on Earth, so then maybe we can reverse the
Sorry,
equation.
I couldn't got the first part of your answer. What was it?
Then maybe if we want to find the R, then we could just reverse the and maybe get R to the LHS of the equation, and then we experimentally find out the quantities as in F. We only have to find the FASR
But
because
how do you find the FASR? I mean, how do you find the experimentally FASR? Of course, either you can find out the FASR or you can find out the F solar constant minus FASR. Whatever you can find out, you can find out the one of the way I can tell you very simple way is that you send the satellite. Satellite will look toward the Earth and it will measure the radiation. It can measure the radiation. That will be the reflect. That will be the F solar constant minus FASR, the radiation. So then you can calculate the FASR from that.
but sir, again, if you go by the satellite way, wouldn't that it isn't that very tedious because satellite, I mean, does not have that big a range.
So when you say not a big range, in what context?
It was not, as in we don't want it to. We don't want the uh, what do you say, to find out the observations or take the observations for a specific set of area.
Exactly. That's a very good answer. So let us say you wanted to find out R. You can measure the incoming radiation at that area, and then you can turn your radiometer 180 degree and look over the Earth, and then look into that area. But then all the areas of the Earth are not same. Ocean looks very different from the way the like mountains looks, where the green fields looks, or forest looks, or deserts looks. So all of the areas, they have their typical R. Or what we are interested is finding out the average R for whole Earth. So one of the ways doing is that you take the satellite, you go on measuring the R for small part of all of the Earth, and then you kind of find out the average from that. And that is what exactly done into the modern science, into the modern experiments. Okay, but people knew the value of R long back than satellite. Satellite. When do you know when was the first satellite was launched?
No, sir.
It was in the late 50s, okay, in 1958 or something, okay, and that was also not to measure the R. So measurement of the R started with satellite much later, uh, but values of the R's are known for about like in 19th century onward. I mean, almost like 50 to 70 years before even the satellites were launched, even 100 years before the satellites were put into the orbit. And how would then people would have measured the R? Even if we assume in principle that, let us say, some very hardworking guy, he went from place to place measuring the R or wall of the globe, and then calculated average R. Even then, he would not be able to account for the cloud, because if he measures the cloud one day, the cloud will not be there in the second day. So there is not only the spatial variability, there is also a temporal variability into the R. Okay, if you wanted to find out, you would require each place measurement for whole year, not just one time, to find out the average R. And how the
Sir,
people would have done without the satellite.
sir, but even if you say that obviously the terrains differ, as in we cannot generalize the value of R for different terrains. That is very true. But sir, even what if we want to measure this quantity without the use of sensors, as in the satellite technology sensors? Then, in principle, can it be done?
Sorry, no, I couldn't get your question. You mean in principle can be done without satellite? Is that the question?
Yes, sir. Because as you going by your analogy, that in principle there is a hard-working guy and he went from place to place for 1 year.
Hmm.
Every place he took the reading. So without sensors, as you said, the first satellite was in 1950s. But
Yeah.
we know the value of R even before that.
Yes.
So, sir, how was that exactly done without the use of
Yeah,
sensors?
that's what I wanted to think you about. And people had done it. That's what I mean, genius of those peoples. Okay, so if you are reading the history, you will know the answer. Otherwise it's difficult to get the answer. Uh, so how did they measure actually R? So if you, like, for example, now today is second new moon. Sorry, yesterday was second moon. Today is the third new moon. So if you go into the sky and look toward the moon, you will notice that, of course, there is a bright part of the, so moon, of course, every day looks different, because only the small part of the earth, small part of it reflects the solar radiation toward the earth, and the remaining part is kind of an away from the sun, so it doesn't get the radiation and we can't see it. Okay, uh, but if you are like on new moon night or second new moon night or third new moon night, if you look at the moon, what you will see is that not only there will be bright part which is lit by the sun, but you will also see the part which is supposed to be a dark part, which we are not we are not supposed to be able to see it because there is no solar radiation falling onto it. We will be able to see them. You know why we are able to see them?
Sir, the light reflected back from the earth.
Very good. Yeah. So light falls onto the earth, then reflected back, and then again falls onto the moon, and again reflected back and comes to our eye, and that is how we are able to see the part of the moon which is not directly and not in the line of sight of the sun. So people measured this reflected light from the dark part of the moon, and that is how they actually calculated the hour. And what they calculated comes out to be much closer than what we have been able to do with a lot of satellite and a lot of expenses. So yeah, and if you think about it, it's really a genius that even without satellite, people were able to calculate the hour. Okay. Okay. So before we go into the example that how to calculate the radiations, I wanted to cover a few of the definitions. So, of course, most fundamental part when we come to talk about radiation is, of course, electromagnetic spectrum. So we know that electromagnetic spectrum actually is an so light basically travels as a wave, and if you think about them as a wave, it has a two characteristics basically. One is the speed, and another is frequency. And I think first thing which we learn into the physics is the speed of the light, and that is like a constant. That's something keeps on kind of puzzling everybody really why it should be constant and so on. But so far we know that it's constant. So speed of the light in a vacuum is a constant, irrespective of what frequency it is. What is the other fundamental characteristic of the electromagnetic wave? It is its frequency. So one may argue that why frequency, why not wavelength? Anybody knows the reason for that?
Because frequency is constant. It does not depend on medium. That's why.
Very good answer. Because frequency remains constant, wavelength will change. Okay, wavelength will change. So the frequency is fundamental characteristics of the wave, whereas wavelength is kind of a derived characteristics, and you can calculate the wavelength by relating speed of the light and the frequency using lambda equals c upon nu. And if you look at all of the varieties of the electromagnetic rays that are available for us, you will see that only a very, very small part that we are able to see, that's called visible wavelength, and that's what we call it light. Okay, but from radio waves or your microwaves or X-rays or gamma rays, or everything is basically electromagnetic radiation. Okay.
Sir, can you explain again how the wavelength will change and frequency will remain constant?
I'm not sure how I can explain that, but maybe I will cover that into next, because I didn't. I kind of taken it as granted that frequency is a constant and wavelength is not. But
both are inversely proportional, so I guess both should change.
No.
Sir, if you don't mind, can I tell him answer?
Yeah, please.
See, Pratik, as we know that electromagnetic radiation, as you see that equation, lambda is equal to c upon v. So if our radiation will change a medium, what will happen? The speed will change, but the frequency will remain constant. You are talking about this equation that how if they are
so here v is actually nu, which is frequency. It is not speed. Speed is C, which is
Speed is
constant
C.
for
Okay, I should have.
electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah.
But if we in a medium, the speed is different. As we know that we give as a nu into v, so it depend on the medium. As we know, our light will pass through prism. Then why we are getting the spectrum? Because the change of angle as well as the change of speed.
Yeah, so with respect to a particular speed, there will be a wavelength and frequency.
So wavelength is determined from the speed, whereas frequency remains the constant. Okay.
Frequency can also be determined from the. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So okay. So I was about to ask. So this is an electromagnetic spectrum. Do you know what is the wavelength? What is the frequency of the mobile phone? What frequency do you use in mobile phone?
So is it in gigahertz?
Yes, it is in gigahertz.
I don't know value exactly. I just knew the.
I mean, you don't check on your phone. I mean, what is about all that 4G, 5G, 2G? What is the difference between them basically? Why you need new hardware every time?
4G, sir, 4G means this gigahertz will be around 2 to 8 gigahertz. It's the range of 2 to 8 gigahertz for 4G spectrum.
Yes. I mean, that's what my question was that why you need the hardware change? Why not just change the software when your mobile, your company changes from 2G to 4G? Oh, so roughly, if you take the frequency of frequency of radiation from mobile phone is about 2.5 gigahertz. So if you have taken the 2.5 gigahertz, you know the velocity of the light. Can you calculate what is the expected wavelength? You can take nearly same velocity in the air, those as in vacuum. You can calculate the wavelength and write into the chat box.
Sir, it's given here. If for 3 gigahertz, it's around 1 decimeter.
Okay, here it is given. Okay, I should have hidden this. Okay, yeah. So decimeter is about like a 10 centimeter, and okay, so 10 centimeters. Do you know there was when the mobile phone first time came into the kind of a use, there was a lot of kind of a noise that people say that it will harm it, it can cause the cancer, and it can affect your body and all those things. Why was that kind of an halawala about
Due to
mobile
the
phone? No, that was not when the kind of, let's say, television. Do you know what is the frequency of the television? Do you know the frequency of the radio?
So it's megahertz.
Yes. Frequency of the television is about VHF, okay? And then radio frequencies are even lower than that. But there was not much noise when the people were talking about uh, television or those kind of technology, radio or those technology. I mean, the people are not that much worried about its health effect, but they are more worried about health effect of the mobile phone, and they are even more worried about the 5G. You might have studied the antenna and how what size should be the antenna to get the radiation.
Yes, sir.
What should be the size of the antenna to
Sir,
properly?
higher the frequency, shorter the antenna.
Yeah, but there is some number for that. Let us say,
It's a
yeah.
sir. It is lambda by 2 or lambda by 4 or lambda like that. But we need a modulation and that all thing.
Yeah. So let's say lambda by 4, for example. Then if you had a 3 gigahertz of the frequency, then that will be like 2.5 centimeter.
Yes, sir.
And that is the kind of a size of your organs into the body. Okay, so your organs can act like a antenna, effective antenna for these frequencies, and that's why people are more worried that this radiation will get absorbed into the body, and of course you use it, you keep it very close to your body, this instrument, all the time. uh, Okay. And people are more worried about 5G, and because as you want to have more and more bandwidth for the data, you want to have higher frequencies. Okay. If you have higher frequencies, you have shorter wavelength. And as you have shorter wavelength, chances of the radiation getting absorbed into the body in organs is increases. So that's why this all the worry about the cell phone. Okay.
Sir, I don't understand how exactly organs can function as antenna, even though the size is
Sir,
already.
antennas basically absorb the radiation. The organs are not supposed to absorb the radiation. How can they act as an antenna?
Any material that is kind of a that can conduct the electricity can act as an antenna. Okay, and
Oh,
uh, so suppose you wanted to make an antenna for say short wave. Okay, short wave radiation is at the order of like 1 to 2 meters. Okay, what you do is that you keep just a wire of length 2 meters, and then it will be properly able to interface with the radiation, able to capture the radiation, and then you amplify using the amplifier and all those things. But first, that radiation has to be absorbed into the conductor. Okay, when this radiation can be absorbed into the conductor, when the size of the conductor is right size with respect to the wavelength of the radiation. So yeah, body is basically like a conductor. Okay, and the radiation can be absorbed into the body in that way.
okay, sir.
So, sir, if that is true, then why are we only concerned medically about the extremely high radiation frequencies? What about some little lesser radio frequencies? I mean, the size of the antenna would not differ much. I mean, as Heath said, that lambda or lambda by 2, lambda by 4, any multiple of that, then obviously some of the lower frequencies which we use, which are other than 5G, can also be absorbed by the body in a way.
Yeah, so that's good point. I mean, why we are not worried about say 30 megahertz or say 300 megahertz, which is like 1 meter, and our
Exactly.
body is size of the 1 meter or so. Yeah. So of course, yeah. So suppose you are working as a, let us say you are an engineer and you are working into say Akaswani, or you are working as a military radar operator or somebody, you should be actually worried about these things, this effect, and they actually take the proper precautions not to come into the kind of a direct field of the radiations. Okay, but mostly like in a home, you don't worry because the tower is kept much away from you, and then your radio actually doesn't emit, it just receives the radiation, so you don't worry about the radio set itself. What you worry about the transmitting station, and transmitting station is away, then the amount of the radiation that comes to you is much less. That's why I mean that radio requires amplifier and all those things. Yeah. So if you are, unless you are an engineer that is directly working with radio stations or radars or those instruments, you may not be worried. But if you are an engineer that working with them, that you must be worried about that part. In fact, that is how it was first discovered, the microwave oven. You know that? How the microwave oven was discovered?
No.
Anybody knows how the microwave oven was discovered?
Sir, I don't know if I'm right or anything, but I sense that they just kept some substance and provided no.
Sir, it was something like the scientist or some guy just kept something around a conductor or something, and then after some time when he came, it was warm. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, something like that story I also heard. I've forgotten the name, but I will find out the name next lecture. That the guy was working for a US. I mean, it was working for a company. That company was manufacturing radars for the US military. Okay, and he was kind of trying to repair these things, and he had a chocolate in his pocket. Okay, and he was like the system was on, and he was working onto the antenna, and he noticed that his chocolate melted because like in some time, and then he felt that okay, we can use these radiations to kind of make the things warm. We can use them as a oven. That's how then he went on establishing the microwave. He taken the patent for the microwave, and then that's how the microwave oven came into the existence.
So why only chocolate would melt? Because body would also feel the heat.
Yeah, he would have felt the heat, but that story that we have heard, maybe because heat may have
Might have
also.
ignored the heat.
Huh? Pardon?
He might have ignored it.
He might have ignored it, but I mean, idea that we can use it to cook the food might have come from the melting of the chocolate. That if we can melt the chocolate, we can melt other things too. Okay, let me go to my next slide. Okay, why this slide? I actually have one more slide here. Okay, one of the constants that we will keep on encountering is not basically like a science concept, it's a mathematic concept, but we will be using a lot that is a solid angle. And it's like an analog of the like circular angle that we have. But if you think that angle into 3 dimensions, then it is like a solid angle. And it's defined as a ratio of the area that is intercepted by a cone of radius r onto a sphere, and then square of the radius, sides of the so square of the radius basically. So let's say area is sigma, then okay, I have made a mistake here in this my slide. This should be r square here. Okay, yeah, and unit of the solid angles are steradian. So if you take like wall of the sphere, then the solid angle of the sphere is 4 pi r square. So if you can think them as a like what portion of the sphere that we are talking about. That's how you can think about the solid angle. One of the concepts that we will be using will be like a differential solid angle, and that is given by sine theta d theta d phi in a spherical coordinate or in a polar coordinate also. What is the spherical coordinate? So the direction, change in direction. I hope you know that difference between the Cartesian coordinate and spherical coordinate, but just let me briefly explain. So let us say this x, y, and z. That's like 3 dimensions we describe in Cartesian coordinate. In the spherical coordinate, the one dimension is the distance from the O, that is r, and another dimension is the angle that is into like a horizontal plane, and that we do call it phi. Another angle is angle with respect to the z axis, and that angle let us call it theta. Then if you were to describe a small change into the solid angle, you can describe it using sin theta d theta d phi. And one of your assignment would be to find out that this equation. Why is the solid angle is sin theta d theta d phi and spherical coordinate? Okay. How do I remove this block between? Okay. Somehow every time I click this block comes here. Okay. Okay. What I was supposed to. Okay. Okay. Then, of course, let's come to some of the definition of the radiation. So, monochromatic intensity. It is also called radiance. And it's amount of the radiation that is emitted per solid angle, per unit time, per unit area, and that area has to be perpendicular to the direction of propagation, and then per unit interval of the wavelength. Why such a complicated definition? Sometimes I wonder. Okay. But one thing I forgotten it before I wanted to tell you this slide is that is the solid angle a directional quantity? Is the solid angle a vector quantity or not? You have to give answer. I don't know the answer honestly. I searched some of the like online sources, Google and some books and these things. So like angle, for example, you can have 30-degree angle. So 30-degree doesn't have any directions, but you can change. You can talk about say change in angle. Then it has a particular direction. You can talk about like clockwise directions or anti-clockwise directions. Similarly, in solid angle also, you can have a directions for change of the solid angle. But does the solid angle itself has a direction or not? That's kind of what puzzles me. Okay. It's not a vector quantity that I know for sure, but it has a direction. For example, as I just mentioned before, solid angle of the whole sphere is 4 pi r square. Okay, what is the direction of the sphere? There is no direction defined of the sphere, at least in 3 dimensions. Okay, but if I had a solid angle only of this size, I can think about the solid angle that is direction of the solid angle as something that is going into the center of it. So when you go through the literature, why I'm making fuss about this thing, because when you go into the literature, sometimes you will see the solid angle as kind of a directional quantity. Sometimes you will see them as a non-directional quantity, but yeah, I think you have to bear with that. Okay. Yeah. So now let us come to this definition of the radiation, and you should know this definition. This is because all of the radiation laws are basically defined into the terms of the I lambda. Okay, and I lambda, often called radiance, is technically name is monochromatic intensity, or maybe whatever you want to call it. Okay, so we are trying to define the intensity in terms of the energy. So let us say there is a change in energy. Now, this definition involves that you should have a unit area perpendicular to the directions, but you don't always find the directions perpendicular to the propagation of the radiations. That's why this cos theta sign comes into this equation. So let us say the direction was in this direction, okay, and then this angle was theta. Then you can actually calculate what it would have been like into the direction of theta. If this is an area, let us say it's in horizontal plane, then you have effective area is cos theta d omega. Then of course all of the radiation laws are for monochromatic light, so that's why d lambda into the denominator. dt is basically the kind of an the flux, and dA is of course the area. So many times they also call this flux. The reason for that is that, of course, in the denominator there is a dA, and people used to think as a kind of photons going from here and crossing the area. but flux is kind of an what is called not correct nomenclature for this quantity. Okay, but many of them in literature they described as a flux, radiation flux or flux density. Then you should know that basically it is the amount of the energy that we are talking about. Okay. Now this is the quantity that is in terms of this is the all the physics laws are defined into the all the 4 laws that we talked about previously are defined in terms of this quantity, but this is not what we measure most of the time. Okay, what we measure is either we measure kind of a mean intensity, or what we measure is kind of an amount of the radiation that falls onto the sensor. So let's say if you are an experimentalist, you will have a detector, and detector will have kind of a finite surface. Okay, what you will measure is that radiation coming to the detector from all the directions. Okay, and probably you will kind of do arrangement of let's say you can put some kind of a collimator onto the front of it, or some way you can restrict the directions to find out radiation coming only into these directions or going into these directions. But most of the time you will not have a kind of an infinitesimal d omega. You will have finite value of omega, and then you can divide omega to get this quantity. So this quantity, which is basically integration, cosine weighted integration of the radiation over all the solid angles, is called irradiance. Now, of course, radiation, radiance, irradiance, people use it very loosely. I mean, if you are kind of an, when people talking about the colloquially, but there is a different meaning for that. Okay. In this case, this quantity is highly directional. For example, if you are kind of an, say, if you are doing a simulation, you are calculating the radiations that will reach to the, say, some satellite sensor, for example, or if you are designing a telescope that should receive some radiation, then you are kind of thinking in terms of the direction, which direction that radiation will come. You have to point the directions and so on. When you are thinking about this quantity, you are not thinking about the directions. What you are thinking about that amount of the energy that you will receive. Okay, and once you have this quantity, so this quantity actually doesn't have much direction, but still you can split this into 2 parts. You can talk into the radiation that is in the top hemisphere or radiation that is into the bottom hemisphere, and then you can have kind of an sorry, I have to do something about this. Are you all able to see this black band into the bottom, or just it is appearing on my screen?
Sir, we can
Are
see
able to-
this
I see.
blend.
So I have to somehow. Anyway, I think we will take care in next lecture. When I'm trying to take the pointer here, that black band comes, and actually I want you to see the text, not the black band. Anyway, yeah. So why we have to? So often you can split this irradiance into 2 parts. You can say upward going or downward going, particularly when it comes to the atmosphere. For example, maybe you are interested, let us say, how much surface temperature will rise when the solar radiation will fall onto it. Okay, then you know that you can think the surface as an horizontal area, and then radiation falling into it from all the directions. I mean, most of the radiation will be from the solar direction, but from other direction also radiation came from, say, atmosphere and scattering and other processes. And then you wanted to find out how much radiation is falling, and then you can find out other quantity like how much is being absorbed and so on, and how much temperature will rise and things like that. Okay, or you have a kind of an LED, and you want to find out how much radiation is getting emitted. So you have a radiation. So you know the radiation is going only in the one side of the LED. The other side of the LED, there is no radiation. For example, similarly, like radiation is falling onto the surface, you are basically assuming that radiation is just falling onto that surface, either getting reflected, but below that surface is not going. In those circumstances, you actually want to use up only the half hemispheric irradiances, not the like full definition, which involves the integration over all the solid angle. Now, let me come to this previous definition. So we talk about the intensity, but most of time what we will be able to find out is the mean intensity. Okay, so if you have intensity and you do an integration of this intensity over all the solid angle, and then you divide the intensity integration of the intensity by all the so say integration of I lambda d omega divided by integration of d omega. Okay, and then we know that integration of d omega is basically 4 pi r square. So you divide this total amount, you integrate over this I lambda, and then you divide by the solid angle of the sphere. Then what you get is the mean intensity. And this mean intensity is sometimes is a useful quantity we will see in future slides. Okay. In this case, for example, if you have irradiance and let us say you imagine a kind of a small sphere into the, let's say small cloud into the sky, and then sort of you do the integration over all the directions of the cloud or all the solid angles that you put a cloud into a sphere, and then you do the integration of f lambda, you will get the value 0 here. Why, you know? Let's say in this case, let's say you take a surface, and then let's say radiation is like going like this way, and you do the integration over all the solid angle for this quantity. What you will get is a 0. This is because cos theta is kind of a symmetric, okay? Because you are doing a cos weighted integration. And in those circumstances, this quantity is not that useful, okay? But what we want is that there is a radiation, and I want to find out how much ozone is produced, for example. Ozone will be produced when there is a radiation. Okay? But if I try to calculate f lambda for this atmosphere, small parcel of the air, I will get a 0. So it won't help me. So I need to define another quantity, and that quantity is called actinic flux. Okay. So what basically it tells you that amount of the photons available for photochemical reactions. Basically, it's a measure of the convergence of the radiation at a particular point. Okay. So what you do is you integrate over all the solid angle that intensity. You integrate the I, that is an intensity or radiance, or all the solid angle, and that you get the flux. Again, the flux is not a correct terminology for this quantity, but it is so much widespread use, widespreadly used. We will continue to use this term. Then you get an F. So what is the difference between F and this F? If you look at, there is no cos theta term into this F. Okay. And that is where, so what you will get is that total amount of the radiation that is converging onto that point. Okay. If you had a mean intensity, as I told before, then it will be simply 4 pi. 4 pi into the mean intensity, this number. Okay. We haven't talked about terms like, say, absorption cross section, which is shown as an alpha here. So what is the absorption cross section? So absorption cross section is kind of an, you can think about as an, say, probability of particle interacting with the photons. Okay. So if this is the radiation that is converging at that point, let us say there is an ozone, and let's say NO2 molecule is there. Okay. And we want to find out whether it will be split into NO or O first thing we need to find out that how much this quantity is available. Okay, we multiply by the cross section, so only alpha into f, that is cross section multiplied by the f, that is the amount of the photons that participate into this this event. Okay, but not always when the photons are absorbed, not always they split. There is something called quantum efficiency that shows you a probability that if the photon is absorbed into this bond, what is the probability that bond will break? And that is shown here with phi. So if you multiply this 3 quantity, then you get a kind of a probable number of this reaction happening. Okay, and let us say if this reaction is possible at say 420 nanometer, because all the wavelengths which are smaller than 420 nanometer has equally probable that they will kind of split this molecule. So what you need to do is not just integration over d omega, you may also integrate over the wavelengths for all the wavelengths which are smaller than 420 nanometer. That the quantity you will get. Okay. One quantity you will come very often into literature, photolysis rate, and that is one of the what is called agenda, or one of the items that radiative transfer people are required to calculate more than you can imagine. I mean, most of the global circulation models or most of the chemical transport models, what we are talking about, all they are boiled down to find out this JV in the atmospheric conditions. Okay. Somehow I have to remove this band. Okay. 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 So if you knew the mean intensity, then you can find out the probability of particular chemical reaction, particular photochemical reactions happening or not. Okay. So that's the purpose of the finding out actinic flux. So let me summarize what we have talked about today. So there are 4 basic laws: Planck's laws, Wien's law. We have not gone into the details of these laws, but we know that these laws matters. And how do they matter? They keep us keep the Earth's temperature warm. We have looked into the one example of it, and then we have looked into the definitions. And all that laws which we talked about, they are given in terms of the intensity, or it is also called radiance. Okay, and from this radiance, the 2 quite often used quantities are irradiance and actinic flux. I think it's sufficient for today. If you have questions, we can take it. We have still something like 10 minutes. Hello? Everybody is awake or asleep?
Students, if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, can you explain about actinic flux again?
Okay. Okay, the various things that we do into as an atmospheric radiative transfer, as a part of atmospheric radiative transfer, is one of them is to calculate the actinic flux. Now, what is the actinic flux? Okay, so we know that there are some chemical reactions that take place when there is a radiation available for that reactions, and that radiation should be of particular wavelength. At least wavelength of the radiation should be smaller than some particular wavelength. One example here is an NO2. Okay, so suppose NO2 has to be split into the NO and O. Okay, then this small o, the remaining O will combine with O plus O2, and then it will become ozone. So this reaction is very important for, say, if you wanted to calculate ozone. Now this reaction will happen only if there are radiation available, and that radiation should be less than 420 nanometer. Wavelength of the radiation should be less than 420 nanometers. Okay, we want to find out this radiation. So how do we find out the radiations? We can find out the intensity. Okay, as we know that intensity can have a different direction. Let us say you are trying to do a calculation in the morning. Okay, then the distribution of the intensity, solar radiation will be different than you are trying to do in afternoon. Okay. So let us say at any one moment you have an intensity, and then basically what you do is that you integrate intensity over all the solid angle. Okay, and then you will get this quantity. Okay, but this quantity alone is not sufficient. Of course, this is the actinic flux. This quantity is the actinic flux. That's where the radiative transfer job ends. But if you are a chemist, or if you are a kind of a climate modeler or chemical modeler, then you want to go one step beyond, and that is you should know the absorption cross section. Okay, so what we know is that different species absorbs radiation at with different efficiency. So let us say if you have a kind of water molecules, then we know that it absorbs more infrared radiations than any other species. So how much out of this available radiation, how much will get absorbed will depend on to this number alpha. And how this alpha is calculated? This alpha is calculated into the laboratory. Okay, we take the species into the laboratory, and then we go on calculating the alpha for the different species or different wavelengths and so on. Using many of quantum mechanical theories, you can actually theoretically calculate alpha also, and that is how also many of time it's done. Okay, now you have alpha and you have F. You multiply these two, you get a quantity. Okay, that quantity is the number of photons getting absorbed into the parcel of the air parcel or in the molecules. Okay, but not all of that photons absorbs results into the splitting of the bond. We are interested into the splitting of the bond, and that splitting of the bond requires one more quantity, and that is called quantum efficiency. Okay, so that is again kind of a laboratory measurement. You do the measurement in the laboratory. So alpha and phi you can find out into the laboratory, but this is something that will be different in different places, and that is why the chemical transport calculations are so much interesting, because they are different. If you can calculate everything in the laboratory, you don't need to do kind of a field observations, but you do field observations because you want to find out this quantity will be different for the different places in the different atmospheric conditions. Let's say you had a cloudy conditions. Let's say you had a conditions where you were on the oceans, or you were into the mountains, or things like that. That will change this quantity, and these three quantity together will tell you that how fast this reaction will happen. Okay. So how is that clear? Or I hope could you follow what I said?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello. Sir, I want to ask you one question. I don't know, it's purely nonsense, but I want to ask you, sir, is there any contribution of Earth's core to the temperature of Earth? Means as we have calculated 254 Kelvin. So is there any contribution of Earth's core?
You mean okay? So in the so Earth's core is in a higher temperature, and then your question is that whether Earth is warm because of we have the combination of Earth's core plus the sun. The answer is no. Earth's core does not contribute that much. I mean, Earth's core is very, very warm. That's true. There are a lot of hot water springs that we see. For example, one is like in Tulsi Siam. There are some in Himalayas and so on. That's because of the Earth's core. Okay, so they contribute very minuscule amount. Okay, so main thing that matters for the Earth's temperature is the radiation that we receive from the sun, and the radiation that we lose in form of the outer long wave radiation. That's the main factor. Earth's core is not that much important because uh, uh, it's like only part where Earth's core contributes to the temperature is when there is a hot water springs. They are not contributing directly, kind of, heating of the Earth's surface.
Sir, as I have read, I am not sure about it.
Yeah, tell me.
But as Earth's core, it can change. It can affect our cloud formation. I have read somewhere, and due to that, any kind of changes or contribution.
There are some literature, okay, in context of the earthquakes, that when there is an earthquake is supposed to happen, there is a changes in the earth core. When earthquake happens because of the changes into the earth core, and when there is a changes in the earth core, there are like changes into the ionosphere and charged particles and so on, and they affect the cloud and so on. So one can look into this to forecast the earthquake well in advance, at least few hours in advance. That's what the basic idea of that research article that I have read. Okay, uh, I don't know which research article you have read, but this is what my knowledge. And then there were a lot of follow-up research onto that, and nobody could verify that this is really true. So uh, there is no really reliable research onto that earthquake affecting the ionosphere or affecting the clouds, as far as I know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
But
much.
there is a potential. I mean, let us say if this was not, let's say we go to say Titan or some other moon of the Saturn or something like that. Okay, there may not be a lot of temperature from the Earth, a lot of temperature from the Sun, but there can be a core, maybe very hot, and it can kind of drive the circulations and patterns and these things. So Earth's core, like the temperature of the core, is a potential source that uh, that you have got it correct. That yes, Earth's core has a potential source that somehow, if it could be but somehow it could contribute. For example, like there is a, if you have seen the image of the Jupiter, you will see there is a storm going on, and that storm is going on for last 200 years or so. There is one big spot you can see onto that image of the Jupiter. Have you seen that? Have you, anybody remembers that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
The
sir.
Great Red Spot.
Yeah, great red spots. Now, Jupiter doesn't get so much solar radiations. It is almost all of its dynamics driven by the temperature which is within inside. So depending on the circumstances, the temperature of the core can contribute to the planetary atmosphere, but that's not the case for the Earth. Any other question?
Any other question from you, students?
No, sir.
Okay, sir. So I think we can conclude our session here, sir.
Okay, good. I hope you could follow into this like online talk. I'm not sure how much because if I see your faces, then I know that whether you are getting the point or not. But here, that's not possible. But anyway, if you have some questions, you can write it down, and then we can take it up in the next these things. And maybe I will also try to improve onto the kind of slides and all those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye, sir.
Students, leave now.